Every single day, billions of posts, articles, and videos flood our screens. Some are accurate, some are exaggerated, and some are completely made up, designed to look just as credible as the real thing. So how do we tell the difference? That's exactly what we're going to explore today, starting with a real case that shows just how far a single false claim can go. In 2012, a tragic school shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary shocked the entire country. But within days, a conspiracy theory began spreading online, claiming the entire tragedy was staged and that grieving families were actors. This wasn't an honest mistake. It was a deliberate lie, one that caused real, lasting pain to real families who later took legal action against those spreading the claims. But why would anyone keep pushing a story like this years after the truth was clear? For some, outrage simply pays. Content that provokes strong reactions tends to attract more attention, and more attention can mean more money. Yet this case raises a deeper question, one that philosophers have been asking long before the internet existed. What does it actually mean to know something is true? And how do we tell the difference between knowledge, belief, and outright fiction? So how do we even define this problem? Researchers usually separate it into two categories. Misinformation is false information shared by someone who genuinely believes it's true, like a relative forwarding an outdated health tip, just trying to help. Disinformation is different. It's deliberately fabricated, designed specifically to deceive, to manipulate elections, public health decisions, or public opinion. One is a mistake, the other is a weapon. But disinformation itself isn't just one thing. Experts break it down into three categories, often called the ABC framework: the actor behind a message, the behavior used to spread it, and the content itself. What makes this especially difficult is that these three elements rarely appear in isolation. A single disinformation campaign might combine a deceptive actor, coordinated amplification, and fabricated content all at once, making it incredibly hard for an ordinary person or even a platform to untangle where the deception actually begins. And as major political events approach, concerns about exactly this kind of layered manipulation tend to spike, with public trust in democratic institutions and in truth itself increasingly called into question. From a philosophical standpoint, this is really a question of justification. Disinformation works by giving people a belief that feels well supported, even when the evidence behind it has been deliberately fabricated. Why do smart, educated people still fall for these stories? Researchers have a surprising answer, and it has nothing to do with intelligence. It's called the illusory truth effect. The idea is simple. The more times we hear something, the more true it feels, even if it's completely false. Our brains aren't built to fact-check. They're built to recognize patterns, and repetition feels like a pattern. In one study, researchers showed participants a set of news headlines. Afterward, participants completed a short, unrelated task to clear their minds. Then they were shown a larger mix of headlines, some seen before, some completely new, and asked to rate how accurate each one seemed. The results were striking. Headlines participants hadn't seen before were rated as accurate around 18% of the time, but headlines they had simply seen just minutes earlier, with no confirmation they were even true, jumped to around 24%. Just one earlier exposure was enough to make a claim feel noticeably more believable, which explains a lot about how false stories spread. In other words, repetition can create belief. But belief without evidence is exactly the gap epistemologists have always warned us about. As more false information circulates, trust in media as a whole begins to erode. Surveys show local news still holds relatively high trust, while trust in social media specifically drops into the single digits, and that gap keeps growing. Social media algorithms are designed to show us more of what we already engage with, which usually means more of what we already believe. Over time, this creates what's known as an echo chamber. People connected mostly to like-minded voices tend to drift toward more extreme versions of their own views, simply through repeated feedback loops. And when one group manages to pull members of an opposing group into its own bubble, those individuals can end up changing their behavior entirely, even if they don't fully agree. And echo chambers are just one part of the problem. Technology is also making it harder to trust our own eyes. In the age of AI, even seeing isn't believing anymore. Deepfake technology, named after an anonymous online user who first popularized doctored videos back in 2017, can now generate realistic footage of people saying things they never actually said. Faces, voices, expressions, all artificially created. Experts warn this technology could be used to influence elections, damage international relations, or target ordinary people in deeply personal ways. But there's a silver lining. So how do we spot a deepfake? Researchers point to small details, like blinking. Many AI-generated faces forget to blink naturally because the AI wasn't trained to replicate something so automatic. Another giveaway can be found in how the face moves. In many face swap videos, the head turns and tilts in 3 dimensions, but the swapped face itself is essentially a flat, 2-dimensional image layered on top, and that mismatch can create subtle glitches around the edges of the face. For now, these small inconsistencies are some of the only clues we have, but the technology keeps improving, with ongoing research pushing towards synthetic faces and voices that are nearly impossible to tell apart from the real thing. And like most powerful tools, it can be used responsibly, or it can be misused, depending entirely on who's behind it. If even our own eyes can be deceived, then verifying truth can no longer rely on perception alone. It has to rely on evidence and reasoning. So what can actually be done? On the technology side, tools now exist that work directly in your browser, rating the credibility of news websites before you even click. These ratings are built by teams of journalists who review each site against a set of transparency and accuracy standards, giving each one a kind of report card, along with an explanation of how that score was reached. It's one way technology is trying to restore some order to an otherwise chaotic information space. So how do we close this gap between belief and knowledge? It really comes down to a simple checklist. Before you share anything online, here are a few questions worth asking. Where did this come from? Is the source credible? Does this sound exaggerated or even ridiculous? And have I actually looked into this, or am I just reacting? Interestingly, this kind of questioning isn't limited to journalists. Plenty of satire and comedy shows have built entire formats around exactly this habit, breaking down a claim and pointing out when it doesn't add up, especially when public figures say one thing and do another.